welcome to No Broken Legs. I am your host, Evan Belfiore. It has been a long 2.5 months, I think we've been off since the Super Bowl, but there's been a lot of stuff that we have to cover involving the Cleveland Browns. So to break it all down, Jimmy Champ is joining me on the phone. Jimmy, how are you tonight?
I am doing well. Glad to dive back into our Cleveland Browns here. Talk a little bit about what maybe they're thinking in the draft and what we kind of think about what's happened in the offseason.
Yeah, we are on the eve of the NFL draft, which will be tomorrow night, Thursday, April 25th. The Cleveland Browns, for the third year in a row, will not have a first-round draft pick. Their first-round pick the last 3 years has been Deshaun Watson. He has played, 8 games? 9 games?
A lot of success there.
It hasn't gone very well. And this is a team that's coming off a season where they won 11 games, surprisingly so because the quarterback play was subpar. They did get good quarterback play, mostly good quarterback play from Flacco towards the end of the season. He was a disaster in the playoff game like we predicted. I was shocked when the over-unders came out a few weeks ago to see that the Browns over-under was 8.5. I really thought that would be set at 9.5. What did you think when you saw that 8.5 line?
I saw that line at 8.5, and I think Vegas, just like me, thinks Joe Burrow is going to be healthy and the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be significantly better.
Well, I can't disagree with that. I would also say the schedule is going to be a lot more difficult because they have a lot more quarterbacks that are better.
Yeah.
So just to run it down, they have their 3 home and 3 away with the Bengals, the Steelers, and the Ravens. On top of those games, they will be, we don't know the order of their games yet, but we do know who they'll play. They will also be hosting the LA Chargers and Justin Herbert. They will also be hosting the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott. The Giants, that's not anything to worry about, I don't think. The Dolphins will be bringing Tua and those wide receivers and all those weapons. So those are their home games. They'll be facing the Broncos, whoever is going to be their starting quarterback. I know everybody's worried it's going to be Zach Wilson, but, I think the Browns defense will be okay against Zach Wilson. and whoever the Commanders end up getting, because I think that team's kind of a mess. They will be on the road in Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. They will not be in Brazil for that game, as a lot of people had hoped. They will also be in Jacksonville to take on Trevor Lawrence. They'll be in Vegas to take on whoever the Raiders have at quarterback. And then you also get Derek Carr and the Saints on the road. It's not a murderer's row of quarterbacks, but they didn't really face anybody that great outside of the division besides, I don't know, was Trevor Lawrence probably the best quarterback they faced last year out of the division? And he was a little banged up in that game too.
Yes.
Trying to think back. I can't remember anybody they played that was particularly great. I mean, obviously you have to face Lamar twice.
Yeah, I saw the 8.5, and then I looked at the schedule, and I think 8's a really good number. I mean, when we do our pick show, I will most likely be taking the under because I don't think they're going to get to 9 wins. There are still some holes, some issues, mostly starting at quarterback that I think are just what it is. I just think.
I think it's a philosophy thing. I think that's going to be their downfall this year.
Yeah, it's very fair.
I think the combination of facing teams that are better, and obviously the Steelers quarterback situation last year was a complete mess. And you got to face Joe Burrow when he was still injured early in the season. He did not look like himself the first couple of weeks, and then he got going in the middle part of the season, and then he got hurt and was out for the rest. But whoever it ends up being, Russell Wilson, who torched the Browns last year, so that doesn't look good. Or you get Justin Fields, who's just, that dude's a dynamic playmaker. I'm still surprised that Atlanta didn't make a run at him because he came so cheap, because I just think if you go with Kirk Cousins, you have a very firm ceiling on what you can be. But I guess Atlanta wants to be decent. So I guess kudos to the bully for them.
Yeah, I mean, you have a very good idea, and obviously that'll be something to get into during the season, but
yeah,
you have a very good idea of what your team gets with Kirk Cousins, and for a lot of organizations in the NFL, that's not a bad thing.
No, and I would also like to point out the Browns face a really tough road to win the division because they finished second compared to the Cincinnati Bengals, who finished last in the division. The out of conference place, where you place in the division games for the Browns this year. So the teams that they have for those games, the Browns have the Saints, the Raiders, and the Dolphins. Conversely, like Cincinnati has Tennessee, the New England Patriots, and whoever finished last in the AFC South. I don't even remember who it was.
Yeah.
I don't even remember who it was. So
yeah.
that like those three games, like Cincinnati can very easily, if they're at full strength, go 3-0 in those games, and the Browns could play well and go 1-2 in their games.
Yes.
Which immediately puts you a game and a half behind Cincinnati in the race for the division, just right off the bat, which kind of sucks. But does this team need to win the division this year?
I think if there's one thing we learned from last year, they absolutely need to win the division so they can have as many home playoff games as possible in that situation. This was a completely different team at home than on the road. We were
absolutely.
We were hypercritical of a defense that statistically was great, but had games been called fairly, they lose to the Colts. They lose to the Colts if that game is officiated fairly.
Yeah, I'm still flabbergasted by how all that went. Maybe it's just because we spent so many years watching the Browns get hosed by calls in games like that. It felt weird to be on the other side.
Like it was so hard to watch that game against the Colts in Indy and have everyone tell me how great the Browns defense was.
Yeah.
Like it was hard, but then you watch that defense at home and you were like, "Oh man, this is a great defense."
Yeah.
So yes,
they went 8-1 at home.
Yeah, I think,
and they went 3-5 on the road.
for the expectations they want to have, yes, they need to win the division to have home playoff games.
Yeah, I would agree with that because normally I feel like we would be talking about this as another make or break year, but all reports indicate that the Browns are going to be extending Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. It seems like they're just working out details. What do you think is taking so long?
I have no idea. I don't understand it. It's weird to me. With as quick as you pulled this trigger on giving Jerry Jeudy a ridiculous contract extension,
we'll get there.
I don't understand unless it really is unless the conversations are being had about let's wait and see what Deshaun looks like. Because it would be unfair is obviously we are on the opposite side of a lot of media and Browns fans and people that watch the sport, whatever. Like, we don't feel like Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski are as good at their jobs as everyone else does.
No, I think it's ridiculous that Stefanski has 2 Coach of the Year awards.
We see both of them make the same mistakes over and over again.
Yep.
Maybe not see things that we see. There are clear problems with the team. They're just things that we don't understand. But if you did what you did to get Deshaun Watson and health never comes back to Deshaun, his ability never comes back, I guess you can't really hold that against Stefanski and Berry. So are you waiting to see what's going on with Deshaun before determining lengths and money of their extensions.
I mean, they're not going to see that though. He's
Yeah.
He's only started throwing recently, and he's on a pitch clock where he throws and then he takes some days off, and then he throws a couple of days and he takes some days off. So I don't know how they're going to get an answer on that. My question with this is Jimmy Haslam just playing hardball with them because that's his business philosophy?
It's possible. I mean, like it or not, the actual last product you saw from the two of them was getting embarrassed in a playoff.
Can I take that a step further?
Absolutely.
Let me put it this way. Coach and GM have been partnered together for 4 years. They've made the playoffs twice. They're 1-2 in those games. Are those guys that you have to extend?
Right. When Stefanski wasn't even on the sideline for the playoff win.
Yeah, which I still think that's a problem.
Yeah.
He still hasn't won a playoff game on the sidelines. That's probably not going to change. I don't think it's going to change this year. I think this is an 8 or 9 win team. That's why I was mad that the over-under was at 8.5. I was hoping it would be 9.5 so I could pound the under. But now we'll see where that ends up settling. In terms of Andrew Berry, we look at his drafts, and he's had some hits, he's had some misses. For a team that really loves wide receivers, he just can't draft wide receivers. He just can't do it.
Nope.
And it frustrates me when I hear people talk about how great he is because they'll hold up DeJuan Jones as a really nice draft pick, and it was to get a 4th round or to get that talent out of a 4th round player is really great. The problem is you don't really get the real benefit of it because you're paying so much for Jack Conklin and Jedrick Wills.
Yes.
And only 2 of those guys can be on the field at the same time, and you can't trade Conklin or Wills because their contracts are too high, and nobody wants them because Conklin can't stay healthy. But for all the talk that people make of Wills, I just don't think he's very good.
I don't think anybody thinks Wills is any good. That's what's so weird about it. And I don't know.
Well, it's a good thing they'll be paying him $16, $17 million next year.
Yeah, and you think about the amount of injuries that had to take place last year to get our boy on the field. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was weird. And to circle back to what you said, not only can he not draft wide receivers, with the exception of the Amari Cooper trade, which was a really good trade.
But that's also a trade that just fell into his lap.
Right. But with the exception of Amari, he can't seem to get wide receivers in free agency either.
No. And I get it. The Amari trade was really good. That's been a great trade for the team. He's been excellent. And Berry does deserve some credit for making that trade, but they just fell into your lap. It's like how the Cavs got Evan Mobley. Houston took Jalen Green, and okay, great, we get Evan Mobley now. That doesn't make Kobe Altman a genius, just like it doesn't make Andrew Berry a genius for making that trade. Let's just talk about who they brought in. We've got some backup quarterbacks came in. Jameis Winston, Tyler Huntley. I think Tyler Huntley as a 3rd quarterback he's probably overqualified to be a 3rd quarterback. I don't think he's great, but I think he's a good 3rd-string quarterback, and we'll see if he even winds up on this roster at the end of the year. We see what happens with him in DTR. And they get Jameis as a backup. Do you like the Jameis Winston pickup?
I like Jameis Winston as the pickup. Clearly Kevin Stefanski wants to throw the ball 50 times a game.
Yeah.
Jameis is the guy.
We'll get to that here once we go through the things, because there's some new coaches coming too. I guess he's better than PJ Walker in DTR, so that's an upgrade in my opinion, and you're not really paying anything for him, so that's fine. I'm fine with Jameis Winston. They did also bring back some guys. Zadarius Smith is going to be back. I think that's a big deal. What do you think about them bringing him back? How important do you think that is?
I agree. I think I actually like a lot of the moves they made on defense. I don't know what Hicks and Bush have left, but at least they addressed the linebacker problem.
Yes, I'm very happy that they didn't
So
wind up just giving Taki that job.
yeah, so I really don't even care if they fail. At least they finally addressed it. Hopefully one of them works out. Maybe both of them. Maybe they both fail, but at least they made that move. But I think bringing back the guys they brought back on the defensive line was really smart.
Yeah, they were not able to keep Jordan Elliott, who has left for the 49ers, but they will be – wait, hold on. No. They are bringing back Maurice Hurst, who played fairly well last year. He's not a superstar, but he's the type of guy you need to play maybe 30% of your snaps and be competent, and he seemed to do okay with that. They also got Quentin Jefferson, and then they also kept Shelby Harris. They bring in some back of the rotation guys for cornerback, Tony Brown, Justin Hardy. Those are depth guys. They ended up keeping McLeod as a safety, which they went through like 800 safeties last year. So,
but they
just can't figure out safety, can they?
No, but it's not, to me now, it's not just safety. Like, I look at that defensive back room with the teams the Browns are playing this year, and one injury from those starters, and I think we can point to the two guys who it's going to be, one of those injuries, that defensive back room is going to be in trouble because they don't have depth there. And obviously you can't have depth everywhere. I get that. Mm-hmm. But the lack of depth I think they have right now in the defensive back room, I think is going to be a problem as the season goes on. Because you have to expect Delpit and Denzel to miss games.
Oh, I was going to say you also have to expect Denzel Ward to miss games.
Yeah, like you have to.
Like I don't want to be like a dick with that, but that's his MO. He seems to miss 3 or 4 games a year.
Yep.
And what is Greg Newsome going to look like? He's in a contract year. I think he's fully aware that he's not going to be on this team next year, at least not at the money he's hoping for. And usually when that happens, you don't re-sign somebody at a lower dollar amount. You just draft somebody, and that guy ends up signing somewhere else as a bargain basement deal, and maybe he resurrects his career somewhere else. But I don't know how that's going to work out.
Yeah, I mean, and he was pretty embattled last year. There were a lot of grumblings, unhappy with playing time, playing position, things like that. So you wonder, is he just going to bide his time, or is he going to try to put a great film on tape? It'd be hard to tell.
Yeah, and you mentioned the newest member who wasn't a free agent sign. They traded for Jerry Jeudy, who is I don't know what to make of Jerry Jeudy. He's been in the league for how many years has he been in the league now? 4 years. Jerry Jeudy's been in the league for 4 years. His career numbers are 211 catches for a shade over 3,000 yards and 11 touchdowns. And that's with a 972-yard season and 6 touchdowns 2 years ago. So a big bulk of that production came in 1 year. I didn't begrudge the trade because they didn't really give up anything for him.
No.
I have absolutely no idea why they guaranteed him 2 years. It basically that extension works out to 2 years at $20 million a year. Like that's what the guaranteed money says, is that he's a $20 million a year player. And I know wide receiver salaries have gone up, but Jimmy, can you make it heads or tails of that? Because I sure as hell can't.
No, there's no explanation for it. There is absolutely a precedent of guys, some wide receivers, takes them a little while to figure it out. They go to their second team and they blossom into a better player. He didn't have the greatest quarterback play in Denver, so I don't want to just
that's fair.
Throw it all on Jerry Jeudy. But, they're media guys locked into teams all around this country that we listen to. we respect. Mark Schlereth is universally respected as being a player, an evaluator, a knowledge of the game. And when you heard him talk about Jerry Jeudy, It went, shit. Like, for him to, talk about how, Jerry Jeudy doesn't want to hustle if he doesn't think he's getting the ball. He can be a bit of a locker room cancer. He can be a social media cancer, things like that. Like, and he doesn't want to go all out for the team. And, like, that is the last thing this team needs. So that's a bit scary. But then you wonder how much of that was just the environment and the situation he was in. So you hope he can live up to the potential because he's super gifted. He was an absolute phenomenon in college. But can he ever be worth that contract extension? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think a lot of these wide receiver deals that got signed this year are going to look bad very quickly. Like Christian Kirk got, what, $19 million a year?
Yeah.
No, something more. He might have gotten more than 20.
Maybe more. It was pretty good.
Gabe Davis got $16 million.
Yeah.
Like, guys are still trying to make Gabe Davis happen. Like, the dude had one good playoff game. Like, that's it. That's his career. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, he's a deep ball receiver that couldn't make it work with Josh Allen, who everybody says throws a great deep ball and loves throwing it downfield, and they couldn't make it work.
They did for that one playoff game, though.
Yep, for that one playoff game. I don't understand when there's so many receivers that are coming out in the draft that are competent. It just seems like you can throw a blanket over the next couple of drafts and draft a receiver, and you should be able to find one, unless you're Andrew Berry, and then you can't find any.
Yeah, it just feels like this is a lot of the Andrew Berry moves where it's like, you saw that trade and it was like, wow, that's awesome. That's all you spent for Jerry Jeudy. And then the extension information came out, and you're just like, "Wow, what are you doing?"
And nobody around the Broncos seemed upset. You mentioned how Schlereth was glad to see him go, and I think if Schlereth would have driven him to the airport, he wouldn't even have slowed down. He would have just like popped open the door or had an ejector seat or something. It's like, just get the fuck out of here. But none of their fan bases. I haven't heard anything from their fan base on their message boards, on their Reddits, listening to their local guys talk about it. Nobody seems sad to see him go. And I'm always nervous about getting guys like that.
Yep.
I'm always nervous about that, especially when they've been underachievers.
Yep.
But they need a lot of receivers, Jimmy, because you mentioned it earlier that they're probably going to be throwing the ball a lot. Deshaun Watson did a podcast where he talked about the hiring of Ken Dorsey as the offensive coordinator. We already know Stefanski's tendency to throw the ball too much. Ken Dorsey's even worse when it comes to that aspect of the game. So I guess the first question that we have to ask here is why won't they tell us who's calling plays?
Because they don't know who's going to call plays yet?
Oh, my God. That's worse. That's worse. I'm Ken Dorsey took this job not knowing who's calling plays. I just refuse to believe that.
But it's like we've talked about a lot with Kevin Stefanski where, we think he's kind of an X's and O's guy. We're never really sure if he's a locker room guy. So if he's not calling plays, then what's he doing?
Yeah.
But why bring in a high-profile guy like Ken Dorsey to not let him call plays?
Well, was Ken Dorsey as high-profile as we thought, or had the shine come off of him?
Right.
Considering that offense did look better after he was let go.
Yeah, that's just like, why bring in Ken Dorsey to call plays after what we saw happen to him during the season last year? So it's very strange.
It just reeks of all the things that frustrate us about this front office. It reeks of the we're smarter than you. We don't have to tell you this. It's the game within the game. And, these guys are out here playing three-dimensional chess, that there's no way we can understand, but they're so smart they're 1-2 in playoff games in 4 years. That's how smart they are.
Yes.
And I'm tired of hearing about how smart they are when they have so many problems and they continue to make the same mistakes. And that's my biggest worry for the team this year is they're just going to get so fucking pass happy that this gets into the philosophy thing. I think the Browns are going full bore into passing because they really want to make a splash with Deshaun Watson, and they really want to make that work and make themselves look good for making that move. And it reminds me a lot about what we saw in the Super Bowl in the third quarter, where Kyle Shanahan could have won the Super Bowl, but he threw 9 straight passes with Brock Purdy because he wanted to show everybody, no, Brock Purdy's a star, and I'm going to make him the fucking Super Bowl MVP. I'm going to shove it in all your faces, and fuck all you guys. And guess what? He should have just given the ball to Christian McCaffrey. When they started running the ball again, after those 3 drives where they went 3 and out, they started mixing in runs, and all of a sudden they start moving the ball again. And I think balance is so important in football now because defenses have learned how to prevent a lot of the passing concepts. There's still teams, you still have a few guys. Shanahan's one of them, and you get Mike McDaniel down in Miami. And I don't know what Steve Sarkisian's doing in Indianapolis, but he made Gardner Minshew look like a Pro Bowler. So, and the year before he made Jalen Hurts a Pro Bowler and got to the Super Bowl. So that guy clearly knows something.
Yeah.
So defenses have adjusted, and you have to be able to keep your opponent off balance. And if they're just going to drop back and throw the ball 50 times a game, I think defenses are going to be able to get to the quarterback over time, and it's going to lead to injuries. And I just feel like this team still needs to understand that running the ball is important because when Nick Chubb comes back, like, are they going to ease him in? Are they going to try to use him in the passing game like it looked like they were going to do last year before he got hurt? Like, I don't know the answer to those questions. Are they going to be hesitant about that? They did bring in a guy I really like in Foreman for the backfield who that dude just runs well. I'm still mad about that playoff game 2 years ago in Tennessee where he gets a carry in the second quarter and busts off like a 45-yard run and then it doesn't touch the ball again for 2 quarters.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Yeah. Which, of course, leads us to another addition to the coaching staff, which is Mike Vrabel. I like the move. He's a coaching and personal consultant for the Cleveland Browns this offseason. That is his official title. He apparently is helping the team, from what I heard from Darryl Ryder. His specialty is understanding the rules and how to work within the rules to find some gamesmanship. And that was something that Bill Belichick always did a lot of. So it's not surprising that Mike Vrabel is good at those things. Do you think Stefanski and Schwartz can find ways to utilize what Mike Vrabel will be telling them? I don't know enough about Vrabel's defensive philosophy compared to Schwartz's defensive philosophy to really know if there's, synergy there or if maybe they come from different schools.
I don't know. But it feels like you're getting close to once again to having too many alpha males in a room. Like,
well, what if Kevin Stefanski and Ken Dorsey aren't alpha males?
Well, okay, that's fair. It feels like you may be once again. It feels like you may be once again in a situation where if the season goes south and you fire Stefanski, that you've got like 6 guys on the coaching staff that are like, I won't work for him. You got to give it to me. Like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, if they're going to fire Stefanski, if he starts out slow, then why are they talking about giving him an extension?
Because they don't believe they're going to start out slow. They believe Stefanski's the guy. They believe Deshaun's the guy. They believe the philosophy will work. We just haven't really seen it.
I mean, there's a scenario where their first 5 games are, I don't know, say you get 2 division opponents, and then you get, I don't know, say you get Philly, Kansas City, and Vegas.
Oh, God.
Like, what if this is their first 5 games?
So you go 1-4?
You could be, like, 1-4 is in play with that.
Yeah.
Especially, we don't know what Watson's going to look like at the start of the season. You're not going to have Nick Chubb. What does it look like if they sign him to an extension? They start 1-4. I mean, they're obviously.
Exactly.
I don't think they're going to fire him during the season. I still don't think that's something that's going to happen unless it would take extenuating circumstances. Something would really have to go wrong. Like I don't think 1-5 would get Stefanski fired, but if they were 1-10, yeah, that would. But I don't see them going 1-10. They're not that bad.
Well,
even with this schedule, they're better than that. They're an 8 or 9 win team.
But once again, like as we talked about 2 years ago, when
it's like nothing's changed, isn't it?
when you made that trade, there was no more. When you made that trade, there were no more like, "Aw shucks, guys, we had a good season." When you make the trade they made, like it has to be an AFC Championship game at the minimum. I don't think you're going to get there.
Yeah, and we talked about that with Ron last year when we were doing our picks, and I said this team told us they're Super Bowl or bust. And Ron like agreed with that, and I think everybody agrees with that. It's just they're not good enough to do that.
It just feels like they're still not good enough to do that, and it feels like they just keep adding people that, like, I don't know, like Dorsey and Vrabel to me it's just weird. I just don't understand it. And God forbid we have a press conference where we actually tell somebody something.
Yeah. I do understand it. I don't know what happened with Stump Mitchell. He seemed to be somebody that a lot of people liked. They bring in Deuce Staley, who comes well regarded, so we'll see what he does there. I don't know what was going on with the Stump Mitchell leaking stuff to the press thing was so ridiculous, considering a lot of stuff gets leaked from these NFL teams. But
exactly.
I remember I had a conspiracy theory about that, but I can't remember what it was.
But I do hope, though, Deuce Staley was a very good dual threat running back. So maybe with Deuce Staley, maybe you'll get a little bit more passing to the running backs, maybe.
Yeah, that's what you would hope, because he spent all those years playing under Andy Reid, catching a lot of passes, and he was a lower drafted guy. This is a guy that really had to fight to stay in the league and earn his spot. The other big coaching change on the offensive side deals with the offensive line. We see Bill O'Brien has gone to coach with his son down in Tennessee.
Bill Callahan,
sorry. Andy Dickerson has taken over. He comes very highly regarded. Everybody talks about how great he is, but it's the offseason. Everybody talks about how great everybody is. So we know how good Bill Callahan is, how good he was. That is a place of concern, especially when we've seen this offensive line deal with so many injuries. How does he come into the locker room? How does he fit the philosophy of what they're doing? Is there any hope that maybe he figures out something with Jedrick Wills? I don't think it's there. I just don't think Wills is good.
No,
but
I don't think it's there with Wills, but I think, fortunately, bringing in, Posick, I think is going to be great. I think he'll be just fine.
Yeah, the middle of that line is stout with Posick, Bitonio, and Teller. It's a really solid interior part of the line.
I think you're just fortunate that with the exception of Wills, it's one area of the team where you've just got a bunch of grown-ups who come in and do their job. I think from an X's and O's standpoint, you will absolutely lose something having lost Callahan, because he had a lot of really cool like little things that were just absolutely phenomenal. He's one of the best O-line coaches in the game. So you'll lose something there.
Yeah, the development aspect of it's huge.
Yeah, but you still have an offensive line that's meant to block forward, and you keep making them block backwards.
Yeah.
So it's just what it is. Like,
is there any hope that Jones will just start at left tackle?
No, not till the injuries happen.
He's going to start on the bench. And that just annoys the shit out of me, and it plays into another philosophy thing that I hate. You want Jones earned a starting spot. Like, that dude was a 4th-round pick. He fell in the
not...
draft because he liked basketball when he was 17, and people were worried about his weight, which I guess there's a little more concern about his weight. He is a really big guy.
Yeah, he's a big dude.
But he put the work in. He got out there on the field. He went in for Conklin when he got hurt. He was excellent. He went man-to-man with T.J. Watt. He looked like the only Browns player I've seen in a while that could actually slow Watt down. And his reward for playing well for his games is going to be to start the season on the bench. I just think that sends the wrong message to your players. I mean, I don't know what the answer is because you can't get rid of Wills and you can't get rid of Conklin. I don't know what the answer there is, but it just seems wrong that Jones is almost assuredly not going to start the season on the field. It just seems dumb that probably your best tackle isn't going to be on the field.
Yeah, he's definitely not going to start. But, I mean, Stefanski's definitely not a let's look back at last year kind of guy. It's all about moving forward and blah, blah, blah bullshit. So, obviously, and I don't think Stefanski has the stones to tell Jones, dude, you're like the 8th highest paid offensive lineman, so you don't get to start.
Yeah. Like, and again, it goes back. It goes back to what I said. You hit on one of these late round draft picks, but you don't actually get the benefit from that pick being good. It's not like with Emerson, where you take him later and he's great. He's great. They're probably going to re-sign him. He's getting all the money that Newsom wants.
Yeah.
I do want to ask. Go ahead.
Like, how much damage can be done by not starting somebody to earn that spot? How much damage could be done by starting Conklin and Jed Wills again?
Yeah. And what if those guys stay healthy and they're just okay?
Yeah,
they're just okay.
Yeah.
Now he's sitting on the bench, and it's, like us when we were on the bowling team that one year, where we're like, can we bowl? Can we get a chance to play and show that we're better than some of these people?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's just not going to happen. I've been waiting to ask you this question because I know it's something that Browns fans aren't going to want to hear. The reworking of Nick Chubb's contract almost assures that he's not going to be a Cleveland Brown after this season.
Yeah.
How do you think Browns fans are going to respond to this team just letting Nick Chubb walk at the end of the year?
I mean, if Browns fans would listen to the No Broken Legs podcast and pay attention to me, if they would have softened this blow for them, because they would have known this was coming 2 years ago. Like, this was...
Giving Jerry Jeudy $20 million, and they're not going to give Nick Chubb, 12 or 13 next year for 2 years or something. And not even that. You could probably get him for 2 years at 22 guaranteed.
This has been in the works since Deshaun Watson came on board. This is just something that's going to happen. I think Kevin Stefanski would rather go 4 wide with Naheem Hines in the backfield than have to worry about handing off to Nick.
The best player on this team, at least offensively, I think he's the best player on the team. I think he edges out Garrett as good as Garrett is. I think Chubb's just a little better.
Yeah.
He's the best guy on the team, and they're going to let him walk. And we'll see. Maybe he comes back from his knee injury and he's not the same guy. It's possible.
Which would be understandable.
Yeah, I mean, he's injured that knee twice now, and that injury in that Pittsburgh game was just horrific. I mean, he basically destroyed everything in his knee.
Yeah.
So I can understand a little trepidation from the Browns side of things, but I mean, if Nick Chubb wasn't Nick Chubb, they would have cut him this offseason.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. His money at his position, the Browns wanted to cut him, but they knew if they cut him, the fucking fans would actually revolt there would have been a real backlash, and they don't want to deal with that shit.
Yep.
I don't know. Is that it? Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Do you have any thoughts on what positions they should focus on in the draft?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. So I guess this all leads into what comes up this weekend, Jimmy? We have the NFL draft. The Browns will not be drafting tomorrow, I would assume. I'd be shocked if they traded back into the first round. So they have a second-round pick. They have a third-round pick. The last of their fourth-round picks are going to Houston again this year. What positions do you think the Browns need to focus on?
So I think there's a small group of them that if they went in any of these directions, I'd be okay with. You still need talented depth on the offensive line because of just the age of the injury problems the Browns have there. If you wanted to take another shot at drafting a wide receiver, I'd understand.
That's what a lot of people want them to do with that second round pick. And just so we're clear, they have their second, third, and seventh round picks. So 54, 85, and then 243. And then they have a fifth, a sixth, and another seventh from various trades.
Yeah.
So you got 6 picks. 54 and 85 are where you're looking to try to get somebody who can at least contribute this year. The rest of them are going to be flyers.
Because whatever you think, whether it's him, whether it's Stefanski, Elijah Moore was a non-factor last year.
No.
David Bell appears to not be an NFL wide receiver.
Look, they told you what they think of David Bell when they traded for Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, so if they draft another wide receiver, give it another shot, I would understand. As I talked about earlier, though, I still think they need interior linebackers and talented depth at secondary.
With 54 and 85, I'd be looking at linebacker, defensive tackle, and, like you said, maybe try and find a cornerback to replace Newsome after this year.
Yeah, those are okay areas.
I do not understand why people want this team to draft another receiver. You have spent a third-round pick on Mitchell Schwartz, who couldn't play. You spent, what was David Bell, third, fourth round? Was he later?
He was fourth or fifth, I think.
Fourth or fifth round. He can't get on the field, and you traded a third-round pick for Elijah Moore, or was that a second?
Second, I believe.
I mean, I know you traded nothing for Jeudy, and you didn't trade anything for Cooper, but they eat up a huge amount of your cap space. So those two guys are counting for roughly $45-ish million.
Yeah, and I guess my only concern
and they drafted Cedric Tillman, and that doesn't even count DPJ, who they drafted just a few years ago, and they already gave up on.
Poor DPJ, pour one out for you.
But I mean, how many resources can they throw at this position when the whole point of going and getting Deshaun Watson was he's supposed to make the wide receiving core better? He was supposed to be the guy, unlike Baker, quote unquote. And actually, I think this is true for Baker. He can be a really good quarterback if you give him somebody like Mike Evans. We saw it last year. But that wasn't good enough. They didn't want to have to invest a ton of resources into surrounding their quarterback with weapons. So they spent all that money on Watson. He's got to elevate these guys. I don't see how they can take a wide receiver in this draft because they've already spent so many resources on wide receiver.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. I totally agree and see where you're coming from. I'm just concerned, Mark Schlereth is right about Jerry Jeudy. You've only got one quality wide receiver on the roster.
Which means you're not going to have any quality wide receivers on the roster after next year because I don't see Cooper coming back. That's what I see with what they did with Jeudy. They're telling Jeudy, we want you to be our main guy moving forward. Yeah.
So
and Cooper is going to be in the background. The future. For future plans. Obviously, he's going to be on the team next year.
Yeah, but I'm the way you phrase it, though. I mean, I think that's really good. If you go, I'd be fine if you went interior defensive line and maybe another tackle, or interior defensive line and a safety cornerback guy.
Or
I'm good with that.
Both those picks can go on the line. Take a tackle and take a pass rusher.
Yeah, it's. I mean, Andrew Berry's only got a couple chances, but he's got to get. There are some position groups that he's got to add some depth to, because it's going to be a long season with that schedule.
Yes, it is. I just, it's another situation where they went all in 2 years ago. They've got nothing to show for it, and everybody's acting like everything's fine. It's just like we said at the end of the year last year. It's just like the room's on. They're the dog in the room on fire. This is fine.
Yep.
And I don't understand how people can think that when they are no better than they were in 2020. And that wasn't good enough according to everybody. And they had to move off of Baker because they weren't good enough. And now they're slightly worse than they were when they had Baker, except they traded all these picks and they've got their cap tied up now. Like that dynamic has to change this year. They have very little flexibility specifically for this year. Things can open up next year depending on how things go, but Deshaun Watson's going to be the quarterback of this team this year and next year. Like, that's not changing.
Yep. And and the thing that's rough for him is, like, we've seen in his career, there early when he was really good, when you still had J.J. Watt and DeAndre Hopkins on the roster, there wasn't really all that much pressure on Deshaun Watson, and he was a dynamic, awesome football player.
Mm-hmm.
But just not everybody is built for every kind of situation, and when Deshaun has had to face adversity and stress, it hasn't worked out real well for him.
No. And last time, and everybody can talk about 2020, that team was awful. There was no pressure on him to play well. The year before is the year that I think people should really be looking at, in 2019, where he was really good, got him into the playoffs, and was up 24 against Patrick Mahomes and ended up losing by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
That's concerning.
Yes. But it's just because what you said is the absolute truth, and he has to know it too. Nothing we've said matters if Deshaun Watson comes out and he's a top 5 quarterback. I don't think that's going to happen. I can't believe anybody thinks it could happen. But everything we've said doesn't matter if he is that guy, because he's somebody you traded 3 first-round draft picks for. That's got to be top 5 talent.
Yeah.
So if he's that guy, then none of this matters, and the Browns will be fine. But I don't think he's going to be that guy, so now you've got problems. Yeah. And I think it's going to be bad. I think it's going to be a long year.
Yeah, I just think they're going to be taking heat on this for a while. I wouldn't be surprised if, depending on how the schedule breaks out, he'll look good, I think, against the marginal teams. But, this is all going to be figured out based on how he plays against the good teams and how he plays within the division. And he just hasn't really shown the toughness, I think, that you need to see from a quarterback, especially now. And, say what you want about Baker. Baker's tough.
Yep.
He's a tough guy. He might be too tough for his own good, but
yes.
Like Patrick Mahomes, he's tough. He's not a big, imposing dude, but he's tough. And his teammates know he's tough. And I know Watson has a reputation for playing through injury and being tough, but he played 6 games last year.
Yeah, the Browns haven't seen that.
And
I just think
he just hasn't been on the field enough.
And it's the one thing everybody points to. I just think it's so hard to just say, yeah, the Deshaun Watson of the second half of the Ravens game, that's the Deshaun Watson you're going to get all the time. Because that's what a lot of people are pointing to, going, he's going to be that all the time.
It's like, no, he's not. He's not going to be 14 of 14 all the time. It's not going to happen.
Right. I'd like to see the Browns play in a Super Bowl, so I hope you're right.
I mean, first off, he's not only going to throw 14 passes and a half. He's he's going to be throwing a lot of. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of Watson. You know what? We may have I had the run with the Flacco parlay that really made my year last year, along with the Kansas City futures. Maybe we might have the Watson parlay where we're just hitting his over on yards and attempts and and interceptions. We'll see if he takes care of the ball. I feel we're just where we were last year, man. They're just spinning their wheels.
Yep.
It's like they got to make something happen this year, or I don't know, everybody's going to get fired, but probably not because they're all going to get extended. And
Yeah, and I don't know. Like
I
I
can't
said,
see Haslam firing everybody, even if they miss the playoffs this year.
just the coaching, the additions to the coaching staff to me are just weird because I just think you're gonna get into, well, was that a Dorsey play or was that a Stefanski play? I wonder if Vrabel told him to do that, or I wonder what Vrabel would have told
Well,
him
we didn't get
to
into it because we just don't know who's calling plays, but the way this should be set up is that Dorsey and Stefanski would come up with the game plan and come up with a philosophy and script those first however many plays that they like to do, which Deshaun Watson doesn't like, so that's great. That just to me sounds like the Kyler Murray not wanting to study thing.
Yeah.
Because so much of what we see, the NFL has become very intelligent across the league. It's a lot like what's happened with basketball. And a lot of people have stopped watching basketball, whatever. The thing that LeBron James has really done to change the game of basketball is his court vision and his ability to know where everybody is on the court. And we're seeing the next evolution of that with Nikola Jokic, who's somebody I was critical of when he was getting a ton of MVPs before he had the playoff success. But now we're having this conversation. They won the title last year. He was excellent. He was every bit the player that everybody said he was in the playoffs last year, and he looks like he's doing it again this year.
Yep.
Football has become a smart person's game. You can't just walk out on the field and out-talent other guys because they know the other team knows what your tendencies are. They have specifically set up things to take away what you're good at. They know your tendencies, and they will try to fake you into doing things that you think will be successful but will lead to 6 points the other way, like we saw in that Pittsburgh game where Deshaun Watson threw the pick six right off the bat.
Yep.
Like, that's a coaching thing. Some of that is on Watson. He's got to be able to read the defense and not just blindly throw it to somebody. But that is a coaching thing. That was Pittsburgh saw something and how Cleveland does its alignments and how they call plays, and they knew they could get away with something like that. And they took a chance. And that's what a lot of these defenses are doing. If he doesn't like the scripted plays, I don't know, the scripted plays seem to work a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like, they seem to do all right with those scripted plays, and then when they get into the flow of the game, that seems to be where things get worse. So if he wants to do more flow of the game type stuff, that's concerning.
Yeah. Well, but hopefully they've worked on the trust with that because I totally agree with everything.
A lot of problems. They got a lot of problems, man.
Yeah.
They just have a lot of problems and a lot of things that they need to work on, but everybody just seems to think it's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. It'll be great. It's fine.
So you got them under right now. You think they win 8? I think that 8.5 is a perfect line for where the Browns are now. We'll see if that number gets pushed up. It does seem odd that a team that won 11 games with all of the injury problems they had would have an over-under so low, but I think bettors are taking the Bill Callahan thing into effect. I think they're really taking into account that Watson just doesn't look like he can stay healthy for a full season. And you brought it up earlier in the pod. Pittsburgh's better. Like, they are going to be better because Kenny Pickett is not their quarterback anymore. That is an upgrade. I know we aren't big fans of Russell Wilson overall, but he's better than Kenny Pickett. And a healthy season of Joe Burrow makes the Bengals very dangerous. Not only do we see the division getting better, but the AFC as a whole is going to continue to be really difficult. Buffalo and Miami maybe take a little bit of a step back. They've lost some attrition, but those are still good teams that are going to be vying for playoff spots. Houston looks like they're really on the rise. They look like they're going all in for a Super Bowl, as they should. We'll see if Jacksonville gets their shit together. That's another team competing for a playoff spot. In the AFC West, maybe Sean Payton finds a quarterback and Denver gets their shit together. We'll see what Vegas looks like with Pierce. We would expect Harbaugh to make a difference with the Chargers. I like that's a lot of teams vying for a playoff spot. It's the same thing we talked about last year.
Yeah, I mean, you figure New England's probably going to be a dumpster fire.
Yeah. I'm not believing in the Jets. I know people are believing in the Jets, but I'm not going to believe in the Jets.
Well, I don't know. They end up with Marvin Harrison. I might have to give them some serious look.
I can't. I mean, Arizona's. I just feel like Arizona's just going to stay put and take the best player in the draft.
Well, you're giving Arizona a lot of credit there, bud.
Well, you're giving the Jets a lot of credit for thinking that they're going to make a move that works.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
So we can both be right on that one.
Which dumpster fire organization makes the worst mistake? That's fair.
I love how Nick Wright has had them taking a tight end because why would you bother protecting your 40-year-old quarterback when you can just give him another weapon that he'll be on his back and not able to throw to or on the sidelines because he's hurt?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a good idea.
Oh, and we didn't even mention – I don't know what Indianapolis is going to look like.
No?
That team wasn't super talented last year, but they were contending for a playoff spot. Well, they were for the division. They weren't really necessarily in the playoff hunt at the end of the season. They really only had a division hope because the division was pretty bad. But he can coach. That dude can coach, and we'll see if Richardson can stay afloat.
Yeah,
but that dude's super dynamic,
talented, and played pretty well. So
yeah, no, you're not worried about New England though.
No, I'm not worried about New England.
Or Tennessee. That's the team I couldn't think of before was Tennessee.
New England and Tennessee, not too concerned.
Yeah, those teams are probably going to be pretty bad.
Probably pretty bad.
And the NFC is going to probably be pretty bad too. And another thing to remember about the Browns over-under, the AFC teams have 8 home games this year and 9 road games. Last year that was the reverse. I'm sure that plays a little bit into it, but...
Oh, you mentioned their road record last year, so...
Yeah, it was pretty bad. And I'm sure we still think Kansas City's the class of the AFC. I think they proved that last year.
Yeah.
San Francisco, the class of the NFC, they're probably going to lose Brandon Ayuk. We haven't seen that happen yet. That's something to keep your radar up for this weekend. But do you have any faith in anybody to knock them off? Do you think Detroit can get it together and actually come through? Because they choked that game away something awful.
I mean, I know you're not asking me that question.
Yeah, you were not a believer at all last year.
There's a better chance of the Packers knocking them off than Detroit knocking them off.
Yeah, man. I guess that's a team that you would look to continue to improve. Dallas is still Dallas. They're going to win a ton of games, but they're not really going to be in contention because they can't get by they're not going to be able to get by San Francisco. That team just has their number. Do you think Philly with a new offensive and defensive coordinator can bounce back?
Yeah, they just still have a ton of talent on both sides of the ball.
I agree. I also think them bringing in Fangio and Kellen Moore, I don't know if those guys are as good as the coordinators they lost from the Super Bowl year, but those guys are really competent coordinators, and I think they'll do their job well enough so that I'm blanking on his name. The Eagles head coach. Sirianni, thank you. I think that'll put Sirianni in the place where he's doing less of the X's and O's stuff and he's doing more of the leadership stuff because I think that's where he really excels. Yeah, he really excels at that.
Yeah.
Well, that's it, man. I guess San Francisco, Super Bowl favorites in Vegas because... I don't know. Nobody's ever won 3 Super Bowls in a row, so I guess that's enough to knock Kansas City out of that spot, even though I think they've earned it. I mean, Patrick Mahomes has played 5 seasons. He's been in the AFC Championship game all 5 of those seasons, and he's been to the Super Bowl 4 of them, where he's 3-1, and the Super Bowl he lost, his offensive line, everybody got hurt. His team had a tumultuous problem with Andy Reid's son having a DUI, and he was still making passes that I watched. Yeah. I watched clips of Tampa Bay's receivers looking at his throws and going, "How did he do that? Like he was parallel to the ground. How did he throw it?"
Yep.
All right. Well, that's it, man. It'll be fun watching the draft this weekend. See who the Browns get. We'll see if they fill any of the holes that we're looking for, or if they continue I don't know. They continue just throwing resources at wide receiver, even though they continually fail at it.
Well, we need to give Deshaun all the weapons possible, man.
Yeah, we didn't want to keep Baker because you had to surround him with too much talent, and now all they're doing is worrying about surrounding their quarterback with talent. It's the philosophy thing, man. It just doesn't make any sense. I think they're going to get too pass happy. I'm warning Browns fans. I know you want to be excited, but I'm concerned about the future of this team, not just this season, but moving forward.
And you very much were on the pulse of the team starting the year last year, so.
Yeah, I'm surprised they ended up hitting the over, but that defense did what I was hoping it would do, at least at home. That home field advantage is not going anywhere. Browns fans are going to be insane. They are going to be loud. They are going to be ruckus. They are going to intimidate other teams, at least the bad teams that come in.
Yeah.
The AFC North teams are used to that kind of stuff, and it'll be interesting to see how the Chargers and the Chiefs and the Dolphins respond to that crowd.
Yep, I agree.
I'll be really interested to see that. So,
yep.
We'll obviously have more as the season goes on. We'll definitely have our over-under pod that we do every year. That'll come, the season starts right around Labor Day, so we'll probably have that. We'll start getting our pods out late.
Yep.
Probably sometime in August, hopefully. We're really good at those. I was looking at my numbers. 18-14 last year, 19-12-1 the year before that. My down year, I was 16-15-1, and in 2020, I was 21-9-2.
Yep.
It's a great way to make hay and set yourself up for a good postseason run to make some money.
Sure is.
Well, thank you for joining me tonight, Jimmy. It's been fun catching up. We haven't done this in a while.
Yes, it's good to get back into it, and no place I'd rather be, brother.
And I would like to thank all of you for listening. We'll obviously not have a lot of content coming out. We may do a basketball pod as we get closer to the NBA Finals. Maybe we'll rope Brandon in. But we'll see if that happens. Maybe, maybe not. There's a ton of shit going on in the Belfiore household, so and I know the Champ household doesn't get any slower.
Amen to that.
So look for us sometime later this summer and into the fall as the season starts picking up, and we'll see you then here at No Broken Legs.